Time is far from over. This man's heading for the top.
And the man that he is chasing at the top, going after the top prize of $16,000 and coming through the roundabout, here is Mark Allen. And Dave, he continues to be so smooth.
Well, it's just 3 miles left in the bike legs. Mark's confidence certainly is climbing. He always has a strong run segment, and he knows if he gets off the bike with a commanding lead, he's going to be difficult to catch.
Mark Allen, twice runner-up in the Hawaii Ironman. Brooks Clark currently in 5th place. And here comes Tom Gallagher. Gallagher passes 2 men. He has now moved up 10 places from 14th to 4th. In 2nd place, Mike Pigg.
Mike looks like he's laboring a little bit. He's up on the drops right now. His mouth's wide open. It really looks as though the season's beginning to wear on him.
But it's not wearing on Tom Gallagher. He has a smile, and he continues to speed along as fast as 35 miles an hour. In fact, they suspended the speed limit for this morning in Bermuda. Normally, it's 25 miles an hour. The yellow dot will show you exactly where we are just past the city of Hamilton. And number 13, Andrew McNaughton, with a strong showing as he continues to move up in the competition and is leading the 2nd pack.
Quite often when you get caught in a pack, you become complacent. You don't really worry about pushing the pace as quickly as you could, and you just sort of sit in and go along with the ride. Andrew and Tom are both strong swimmers, but had poor swims today, and I think as a result of that, have been riding very aggressively, and they haven't sat back in the pack. They've asserted themselves, gone through the pack, and I think they've caught a few people off guard, and are now going after Mike and Mark, who are just ahead of them.
On the left, Andrew McNaughton, who is in 3rd place, and now behind him is Tom Gallagher, who is in 4th place. This is the battle for 3rd. Gallagher on the right side, McNaughton on the left. The strategy here.
Well, the strategy is, Charlie, is that they're really not concerned with each other. They've got to look ahead to Mike and Mark. They know the time difference between them. And they're also concerned about the guys they just passed, because that whole pack contains a lot of strong runners. So they're trying to put on as much time as they possibly can to finish out these last 2 miles of the cycling segment.
McNaughton and Gallagher. And Liz Bowman continues to lead the women as she comes into the city of Hamilton. She has been unchallenged since she took control early in the bike segment. In fact, she has been passing several of the men professionals. Bothered by injuries over the past couple of years, not much was expected of Liz coming into this race, even from herself. And earlier, we talked to her about that subject.
You know, I haven't performed up to where I've had in the past, and I think maybe people are saying, oh, Liz Bowman's over the hill and stuff, but I don't really feel that way because, I'm still working, I'm still doing it and working out and just going along like, I always have, and that's fine with me.
Jan Ripple in 2nd place. Head moving, fatigue is beginning to set in, not as smooth as when we saw her earlier. In 3rd, Patricia Punis, she is being challenged by Colleen Cannon. Cannon on the left, Punis on the right, and Cannon moves into 3rd place in front of Patricia Punis.
In contrast to Jan, Colleen looks nice and relaxed. She's very focused. She's just passed Patricia. Now she has her sights on Jan, who's just ahead, and Liz, who's one more step. I think she looks good at this point in the race.
And Liz Bowman on the left is leading the women's competition. On the right, that is Stefan Fleck in the men's competition. Liz now coming through the roundabout, opening up some breathing room between herself and the rest of the women.
One of the problems I think that the women have to contend with is that there are men on the course, and I think this is probably somewhat distracting for Liz. She's obviously having a great race. She's leading the women, but yet she has one of the male competitors to test her ego, and she's just got to focus and concentrate on her own task, and she really has a race in hand.
This is Jan Ripple checking behind her as she comes into the city of Hamilton. She is in 2nd place, and right behind her is Colleen Cannon, who is in 3rd, and then Joanne Ritchie, who is in 4th place. They're about a half mile behind Liz Bowman, the leader. In 5th place, coming around the corner, Patricia Putis, rounding out the top 5 in the women's competition. Now let's go to John Neighbor.
This is the equipment the athletes have prepared for their bicycle to run transition. The athletes are placed on the rack according to their finish from last year. Last year's winner, Kirsten Hansen, number 51. Colleen Cannon, runner-up, number 52. You can see the athletes have meticulously placed their equipment. There's not a lot of it. In this case, just running shoes and the running number. But in fact, even the shoelaces have special tabs on them that prevent the need to having to tie your shoes. You just pull them tight and they hold.
This is the leader, Mark Allen. He'll be entering the transition area when we return.
Michael Watson coming up in about a half hour here on Sports World. But right now, Mark Bowman are still holding on to the lead and will make their way onto the run course.
Welcome back to the Bermuda International Triathlon. The waters have calmed since the beginning of the event, but the competition certainly has heated up. Let's go to John Neighbor.
Well, it's been Mark Allen pretty much all this race. He has successfully completed a circuit of the island. He's now coming back over the same turf he traveled on the bike at the beginning of the bike course. He'll be turning to his left, leaving that area, to the thunderous applause of the spectators who've gathered here at the transition area. See him now coming into our zone where he will park his bike, immediately lose the helmet and doff some new shoes and head out on the run. Watch this. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. It's going to be less than 10 seconds for him to change muscle groups and change equipment, and off he goes on the run.
The run, the third element of the triathlon. Let's take a look at the course. 6.2 miles in length. Basically, flat in the beginning until we get to Cobbs Hill Road.
Cobbs Hill Road is about a mile in length, and it has 3 undulating hills. By the time you get to that third hill, your legs are pretty empty.
And then near the finish, Killer Hill awaits.
Very appropriately named, 1.2 miles at 14% grade, and it is a nasty climb.
6.2 miles in length, a demanding finish to this triathlon.
Now Mark Allen has completed his jog around the perimeter of the transition area. He's now leaving that area with a very comfortable 2-minute lead, and there's no sight of Mike Pigg. Local organizers have provided local entertainment to keep the spectators occupied until the athletes arrive. Here comes Pigg. Mike Pigg, 2 minutes behind our leader. He's going to try to make up a lot of that in the transition area. He brakes as he approaches, has a small uphill climb, and he'll park his bicycle in the number 2 spot right next to where Allen parked his moments earlier. Now in hot pursuit, Andrew McNaughton. He wants to pass Pigg in the transition area for the second place position, but in order to do so, he'll have to keep ahead of a charging Tom Gallagher.
Several things are done in the transition period. They loosen their shoes prior to getting off the bike, and more importantly, they try to restore their breathing. It's a very difficult transition in that your heart rate is very high getting off the bike, and you have to start out comfortably on the run, but knowing it's only 6.2 miles, you have to push the pace. So you sort of do a running inventory.
So as they come in, Mike Pigg and his trademark visor run out with about a 40-second lead at this point.
Mark Allen very comfortable with the pace that he's setting.
Mark knows that he's 2 minutes ahead of Mike Pigg. To lose 2 minutes in a 10K is roughly 20 seconds a mile, so he just has to run within himself. But anything can happen. It's hot and it's humid, but he just has to talk to himself and stay relaxed.
And here is Mike Pigg in second place. He's being challenged by Andrew McNaughton. McNaughton takes over second. Let's go to Dave Scott of the camera truck.
Andrew McNaughton had a fabulous ride, moved up about 13 places in the cycling leg and really closed the gap on Mike Pigg. We're at about 1 mile into the run right now, and he's just taken over the second place position behind Mark Allen.
Which means that Andrew McNaughton has now moved up a total of 13 places since he exited the water. Scott Tinley was 2.5 minutes behind the leader coming out of the water. He now is in only 18th place, but he's very strong in the run. John?
Well, our women's leader, Charlie, is Liz Bowman. She's retained her position throughout the bike race. Now she's trying to hold on to that lead through the transition. Keeping that lead won't be easy, as this is a field of spectacular runners. So you watch her decelerate and then climb that final hill into the transition area. She looks rather pensive, knowing that she's completed her strong suit, the bike, and is now has to enter an area where she's not quite as talented. Hot on her heels, of course, is the mother of 3 from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Jan Ripple. Jan appears to be laboring on the end of this bicycle portion. She appears to be losing just a little bit of her drive. Perhaps the air temperature is becoming a factor. It's in the low 80s and it's climbing. These athletes need to watch out for the threat of dehydration.
John, dehydration is really deceptive. In a hot race like this where the humidity goes up, the athletes not only need water, most of the athletes are taking in some form of glucose polymer, which is an electrolyte replacement drink. That means that they're having to replace some of the sodium, potassium, magnesium that's lost, and also replenish some of the calories so they can make it through the 6.2 miles on the run. If they don't do this early on, they're going to suffer.
So as Liz Bullman heads out onto the open road with the track, Colleen Cannon and Patricia Puntas and Jan Ripple begin to change their cycling gear for running gear. Also in that pack is Joanne Ritchie, who's been in the top 5 ever since the race began. Another athlete to watch.
An athlete that we've been watching is Robin Brew, who was first out of the water but has been losing ground since then. And attacking him is Scott Tinley. Behind Scott is Brad Kearns. And so as Brew continues to fall back, Scott Tinley now moves into the top 10. And earlier, we asked Scott Tinley about coming from behind on this course.
This particular course and this race are probably the worst scenario of the entire year, where if you get behind at all after the swim, it's extremely difficult to catch up because it's a fairly tight course and there's not a lot of room to spread out with. And so, you know, it's a real advantage, I think, you know, to be near the front and to be in contention, not only from an adrenaline standpoint, from a tactical standpoint, and, you know, a variety of other situations. So, you know, if you give up anything more than 30 seconds or a minute in the swim, then you better have a darn good bike ride.
And one man who had a darn good bike ride is Andrew McNaughton, who is currently in second place after he passed Mike Pigg. Pigg, struggling, has dropped further back. Brooks Clark and Sean Molina are now running third and fourth behind the leader, Mark Allen. And now for a report on the women, let's go to John Neighbor.
Well, chasing Bowman for the women's title is a field of top runners, including here Jan Ripple and Colleen Cannon as they leave the transition area. Also, Patricia Puntas is now being joined by her twin sister, Sylviane. These two run well, stride for stride, and often pace each other on the running portion of the contest. And Joanne Ritchie rounding out the top 6.
We'll be back.
Competition.
Welcome back to the Bermuda International Triathlon. The finish line just on the other side of the beautiful Southampton Princess Beach Hotel and Resort. And that is the goal of this man, Mark Allen, who is leading the men's competition. He checks over his shoulder, and he is safely in first place. He's on Cobbs Hill Road. You can tell by the undulation of this part of the run. And earlier we asked him about the challenge of being the defending champion.
Hey, it's always great coming back to a race you've won, and I'd like to try and repeat here. There's always a guy who wants to knock you off. There's, you know, anything can happen, but it's one of those things that once you go back to a race you've won, you know you can do it once, and it makes it easier to do it again.
Behind Mark Allen, Sean Molina is in sole possession of third place, but he is being challenged by Scott Tinley. Tinley, who has made a strong move since coming out of the water.
Scott has come from behind in many, many races, and he knows that the race isn't over until you get to that final mile on the run. This course is very challenging. He's run a 5:19 mile up to about the 3-mile point. To put it in perspective, Mark Allen, who's out in the lead by about 2 minutes, is about 10 seconds slower per mile. Mike Pigg, who's had a very tough day out here, is almost up at a 6-minute pace. So Tinley knows that he can make up a considerable amount of time and possibly catch Andrew McNaughton for second.
Now let's go to John Neighbor and the women.
Still leading in the women's event is a noticeably tiring Liz Bowman. Her mile splits have dropped to slower than 6 minutes, 20 seconds per mile, and the Puntas twins are now creeping up on her.
Go to the next one.
According to our unofficial clock, Scott Tinley is running by far the fastest mile splits and continues to set his sights on second place. Meanwhile, Brad Kearns has passed Sean Molina, and Kearns is now in fourth place as he stays behind the pace that Scott Tinley is setting. Now let's check in on the women.
Well, Charlie, now looks like the battle for first place in the women's division is really heating up. We mentioned earlier that Liz Bowman is beginning to slow in the run a little bit. Now the Canadian twins are running hot on her heels. Looks like they're running better than a 6-minute pace as Sylviane is beginning to eat away at Bowman's lead. Once she can see her, their eyes seem to bore into the back of the leader's head until the race is stride for stride. Here comes Sylviane Puntas. Her sister is just behind her now. So the two twins begin to eke out the lead. And look at the difference in stride. Puntos looks very strong, very smooth. Small conversation takes place. It doesn't look like Bowman wants to give up that position.
Go for it. Go for it.
What are they talking about, Dave?
Well, at this point, Liz is asking Sylviane how far back number 3 and 4 is. She's obviously concerned about her position. She knows that Sylviane's a strong runner, and that first place is being swallowed up pretty quickly, and Sylviane only wants to converse just for a second or two, and she's off.
The Puntos twins are a formidable threat. They often enter these races together. They dress alike, so it's very frustrating for athletes not knowing which one of the two twins they're competing against. Whenever the two women enter a race together, it seems as if they don't care which one of them wins, and therefore one of them usually does. Now Sylviane Puntos with the lead, and there you see coming over the hill, that's Patricia Puntos, also passing up Bowman, dropping her to third. Seems like a comfortable stride.
25, got a half mile.
And here is Mark Allen on Killer Hill. Killer Hill, 1.2 miles in length, a 14% grade, a tough way to finish, Dave.
Very, very difficult hill, but Mark knows at this point that he has a commanding lead, and he's just gliding up this hill, and I'm sure he envisions the finish line just ahead.
Behind him, Andrew McNaughton is struggling. He has dropped out of second place. John?
Oh, meanwhile, you see running down the hill, Kirsten Hansen, last year's winner. She's the woman with the splint on her left arm. That's certainly made an impact on her this week. She's never been a factor in this race, but we can anticipate she'll be back next year. This year, though, the race belongs to this woman, Sylviane Puntos, accelerating with every stride. She's holding 6-minute miles or better, and she's pulling away from the field.
And here is Mark Allen. He has topped Killer Hill, and now the final circle route around the hotel to the finish line, and that one moment that all triathletes wait for.
Well, this is a great moment. Mark obviously is savoring his second victory here in Bermuda. It's really an exhilarating feeling. A lot of fans are clapping and cheering him on. And at this point, you don't feel depleted at all. He probably feels as though he could run the 10K again, but that finish line is only 100 yards ahead. A fabulous race for Mark.
And this is an event that started more than an hour and 45 minutes ago in the water here in Bermuda. And now we top it out at the finish line. And Mark Allen receiving the accolades of the fans who have gathered here to share this moment with him. 1:46.58, the winning time. And meanwhile, Scott Tinley, 3/4 the way up Killer Hill, trying to protect his second place. And we'll be back with our coverage of the Bermuda International Triathlon in just a moment.
We've heard much about the Dock Destroyer, Nigel Vann. This is his opponent, 24-year-old Michael.
Allen has captured the Bermuda International Triathlon, and Scott Tinley reaches the finish line and celebrates second place. 2.5 minutes behind the leader coming out of the water and moved all the way to second place. A strong finish for Scott Tinley. And here is Brad Kearns. He will finish third. Behind him, Brooks Clark for fourth and Sean Molina for fifth. Now let's go to John Neighbor. He's with the champion.
When you were biking away from the field, including Mike Pick, what did that do to your psyche?
Anytime you can bike away from Mike Pigg, it psychs you up. He's the strongest rider out there on any given day. And when I knew that I was putting time on him, it's like it fills you up with more energy than you thought you ever had, and you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And when I could look back and I couldn't see anybody, that's even more incentive to just keep going. I knew that if I had a lead starting the run, that I could probably run pretty comfortable and maintain it.
Did you expect to have such a lead at the end of the bike?
No, I thought maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds at the outside, but I guess it was over a minute or so.
Defending your own title, any thoughts?
It's always great when you come to a race and you win it again. It's the best feeling.
The final moments as we move to the top of the hill, and Sylviane Puntos captures first place in the women's competition.
Sylviane had an excellent race, and she topped it off with the fastest run split of the day. For the 10K, she was 36:46.
And her twin sister, Patricia, finishes second.
And they're carbon copies of each other, both about the same running split times.
And Colleen Cannon of Boulder, Colorado, comes in third. Here are the official results. In the men's division, Mark Allen's winning time, 1:46.59, followed by Scott Tinley, Brad Kearns, Brooks Clark, and Sean Molina. For the women, Sylviane Puntos, the winner. Her twin sister, Patricia, finishing second. Colleen Cannon third. Joanne Ritchie and Liz Bullman. To the victors belong the spoils. For Dave Scott, John Neighbor, I'm Charlie Jones. So long from Bermuda.